All right, let's go to speaking part 3. These are some of the notes I've already given you. So there are about 8 different types of questions in part 3. And of course, the questions are related to the topic of speaking part 2. So these are the types of questions. We're going to go through each of them, one of each of them. And I will write an answer, a response, and also analyze some of the language features. And I also mentioned 5 ways to answer the questions. These are not just for speaking part 3, but they're actually for all, speaking part 1 and 3. I mean, even speaking part 2, but especially for speaking part 1 and 3. So in speaking part 3, these are all the various ways you could use, various strategies you could use to answer the question. Okay, you don't have to use one strategy alone, you can combine them. But the most popular strategy is the divide into 2 or 3 parts. And this is, if you're familiar with this strategy, this is the strategy that you use for, at least I teach you for writing task 2. A lot of the questions in speaking part 3 are very similar to the kinds of questions you will get in writing task 2, or at least the way you answer will be very similar. You state you state an introduction, then you give the first point, and you write supporting sentences, and then you give your second point and you write supporting sentences. Okay, so there's a very fixed structure. Most of the questions in part 3 are very formal, and they're abstract. They're talking about things in general, and that's the way you will answer a part 3 question, pretty much the same way you answer IELTS writing task 2 question. Okay, so let's start with the first question. Different types of what types of homes are popular in your country. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Singapore. I could say, well, there are basically 3 types of homes. Okay, so I have this introduction sentence. Again, it could just be a paraphrase of the question, but it's introducing what you're going to talk about. All right. So normally, if we adopt this divide into 2 or 3 parts strategy, then you are going to have this little introduction, then give, as mentioned before, your first point, then supporting sentences, then your second point, then supporting sentences. Okay, so I will mention my first point. Every time you mention your first point, try to have something that introduces that point. All right, so you can say like the most popular kind of home is the public flat. Most people in my country live in public flats which have no facilities. Some people also live in a condominium, which is a private property. Most condos have facilities like swimming pools and tennis courts. Finally, people also live in landed property. There's houses. These are the most expensive kind of housing, and you can only find them in certain locations. Okay, so you have your introduction here. Let me just color code it. Then you have your main point, and then your supporting, sentence or sentences. Then you have your second main point. You could have a supporting sentence, and then your third main point. If you want 3 points, and your supporting sentences. Okay, so very similar in structure to your writing. How you're gonna approach and how you're gonna approach your writing. So remember I said that there needs to be some kind of phrase that signals that you're going to write or you're going to speak about your first point. Okay, so here the signal is like the most popular kind is, okay, you could say one of the advantages is, one of the reasons is, I mean, not for this question, but for other questions. And here I don't have like, I could put furthermore, I could put secondly, but here I put also. Also is a signaling word which signals that this is an additional point. And then finally, of course, is again signaling. Okay, so it's very structured, it's very clear. The examiner will see the cohesion and the coherence, which is what they're looking for. They can see, there's a logical development to your answer. It's very clearly, divided by your introduction phrases, the most popular, the also, the finally. Okay, and then in your supporting, after every point, you also have a supporting sentence at least. I mean, you don't always have to have one, but it's good to expand by having a supporting point, a supporting sentence. So all these sentences in blue basically expands on your main point. So again, this is a good answer. Nothing spectacular in terms of vocabulary, all right? But I will get to, for the rest of the questions, I will point out some vocabulary, some good vocabulary here and there. But for this is an acceptable answer. There are no grammar mistakes. Okay, not vocabulary or using uncommon or idiomatic vocabulary is not the only thing that is a must if you want to score well in your IELTS speaking. But you also need to make sure that your grammar is pretty okay. All right. So this is okay. I mean, most of these sentences, except for this one, is this one's a conjunction. This is a conjunction, so this is more of a complex sentence. But the rest of the sentences are pretty. Well, actually, this is a bit more complex because you use a relative clause here. So this is considered a complex sentence. But anyway, we want to see complexity. We want to see variety. And so this is a good answer with good grammar, complex grammar, even though there is no outstanding vocabulary. But we will get to that. Remember, you don't have to have that outstanding vocabulary, that less common vocabulary, and that idiomatic vocabulary in every single answer. That's not necessary. Okay, so this is the first type of question. Next is a comparison question. You are comparing, it could be time, for example, comparing something right now versus something in the past. It could be people, maybe genders. It could be things, compare houses and apartments, for example. Okay, so this question is, how have eating habits changed in the past few decades? All right, so eating habits, basically you're comparing eating habits in the past versus eating habits now. All right, so let me start my answer. I think they have changed in several ways. Again, that introduction, that paraphrase. In the past, people would eat less junk food and more real food. On the other hand, these days people eat people eat a lot of junk food, and that is much less healthy. Right? So add another point. Another difference is that 10 or 20 years ago, people would eat more at home. They would have meals with their family and eat home cooked food. But nowadays, because we work so hard, people just eat outside as they have no time to cook. All right, let's just analyze this answer. Okay, as as we pointed out, this is the first. This is the introduction. Then you have 2 points. This point is related to junk food. This is related to eating at home versus eating out. Okay. Because we work with people, just eat outside. Okay, so here, that's the first point, the first difference. Okay, how eating habits have changed. When you have a comparing question, you want to use words which compare. All right. For example, you have on the other hand. This is comparing. This is contrasting. Okay. You have but. Okay. All right. Now remember, even though I mentioned to you before that in your writing class, too, that you do not use, you do not start a sentence with but, so, and, even though it's common nowadays. That rule is basically for IELTS writing. Okay, that's a pretty strict rule that IELTS examiners expect, but and that's really for formal academic writing. That's the rules you have to follow. But in newspapers, in emails, in just normal writing, magazines, perhaps even right now, it doesn't really matter. And anyway, when you speak, you're not really going to. You don't really care about punctuation. You can't tell when the punctuation, whether this is a full stop or comma, whatever it may be. Okay, so this is fine. Okay, the way I've written it is fine. But the point is, you have these words that contrast because they are comparing. This is like that, but that is like that. Okay, so on the other hand, but those are important cohesive devices, signaling words. Okay, that give that talk about contrasting, that talk about something opposite, right? So that's one thing to note. The other thing, you could use would here. Would is in the past. This is talking about, this is a special use of would. It basically means, if you say that, oh, I would do this, or oh, people will do this, means in the past they used to do it. Okay, you could say used to. People used to eat junk food. Same thing. Okay, and junk food is perhaps one of the good, vocabulary, good words that you have here. Okay, not many fantastic ones, but here, examiner will take note of junk food. All right. So anyway, so this is pretty much the same structure. All right. Let's go to the next question. Speculation, and the question is: do you think more people? In fact, let me just do this, okay? Before we go to speculation, let me say this. The strategy for this answer, which is the common strategy that we're using for most part 3 answers, 2 or 3 parts. So basically the strategies is we're going to divide into 2 or 3 parts. Okay, so as I've mentioned here, this is these 5 strategies. You can use all these 5 strategies. Okay, I'm using this one. All right, most part 3 questions would require this. I mean, it wouldn't require, but at least it's good to use this strategy, and you can combine it with others. Okay, so this is the strategy for this. This is the strategy for this answer that we've written also. And let me show you another strategy. The second strategy, which is it depends. Well, third strategy, it depends. Okay. Let's say how to answer this with a different kind of strategy. Let's put it depends strategy. Okay, so it depends on this, it depends on that. Okay, if this, if that. So you could say, I think it depends on where people live. If you're talking about people in the city, then eating habits have changed a lot. Okay, put dramatically. More people nowadays eat junk food as compared to the past. However, for people in rural areas, I don't think there's been a lot of change in the past few decades. This is because there isn't a lot of junk food restaurants in rural areas. Okay, so here is, it depends. If you're talking about people in the city, yeah, it's changed a lot. However, again, you have that cohesive device that signals, okay, I'm going to talk about something opposite. Again, this is comparing, so we could use this. If you're talking about people living in the countryside, there are no junk food restaurants, not many, and so and probably the lifestyle hasn't changed a lot. People still, eat with their family, etc. Now, remember something about all the speaking and even the writing, which is that you don't have to get a perfect answer, and the examiner's not looking at basically at your answer. Okay, so even if you don't know much about this topic, or you think your answer isn't so great, then it's still okay. Just say what you can say. All right, this may not be totally accurate, I don't know. Okay, but it doesn't really matter. The examiner is not evaluating your content, they are evaluating your language. Okay, so this is just another strategy. Okay, similar structure as before. Let's go to the next question right now, which is speculation. Now, speculation questions, basically speculation question is very similar to a comparison. Comparisons where you compare, normally if you're talking about time, you're comparing the past versus the present. Speculation is you're comparing the present versus the future. Okay, so let's look at this. We're going to use the strategy, the common strategy, divide into 2 or 3 parts. Okay, you can say, well, it's difficult to predict the future. Okay, this is something that you can always predict the future, or to speculate about the future. If you come up with this kind of question, then you can always start with this. I do think that it's highly probable that working from home will become more common in future. This is because with advances in technology, communication with colleagues is becoming easier, and therefore it is not necessary for employees to be stationed in an office. Another reason for my view is that this promotes work-life balance, which is becoming more and more important. When you work from home, you could spend more time with your family, and that is important. Lastly, companies can actually save more money, as there will be fewer expenses in terms of electricity bills and office space rentals. Therefore, I do think there's a great possibility of working from home becoming more popular in the future. All right. Okay, so this is a long answer. You don't have to speak so long, and I gave you actually, firstly, okay, as I mentioned, this is the introduction. This is an introduction phrase you can always use, because if they ask you about the future, I mean, it's impossible to predict. Therefore, you could say, well, it's difficult to predict. I do think this. Okay, I do think that perhaps this is going to happen. Now, it's highly probable that. Now, this is good language because the question is about speculating. And this is a good phrase to use. It's highly probable. That means I think this is going to happen because basically we don't really know 100% what's going to happen. Okay, so this is your first point, and then you give reasons because of advances in technology. Okay, nice phrase there, although it's very common. Communication with colleagues is becoming easier, and therefore it is not necessary, blah, blah, blah. Okay, then the second reason is that it promotes work-life. Okay, another good phrase that you should use. I mentioned this in, I think, speaking part 1, work-life balance. If you were to be asked about your work, you could kind of like input this. This is something the examiners will definitely take note of. And then, okay, after that you get to this again. There's a great possibility. Okay, again, you are using similar to it's highly probable. You're using language to speculate. Okay. Next question is the one on advantages. What are the advantages of living in big cities? Okay, so let's start with the answer. There are clearly several advantages, or actually benefits. We use a synonym there to this. However, probably the biggest advantage is the lifestyle in a big city, because there are so many people living there. Cities are normally incredibly vibrant. This is especially attractive to young people. Another big advantage is the job opportunities available. People are usually able to find better and higher paying jobs due to the vibrant or dynamic economy. All right, let's evaluate this. Firstly, benefits. Benefit is a synonym of advantage. In my notes for the writing task 2, the notes and phrases for all the different types of writing questions, I've put benefit as a synonym for advantage. All right. Next, let's talk about this. However is a cohesive device which tells you that we're going to talk about something opposite. Okay, we're going to contrast something. And why am I using however here? Because in this introduction sentence, you have there are clearly several benefits. So what we're saying is that, okay, there are a number of benefits. However, probably the biggest advantage, the biggest benefit. So we're contrasting, okay, in the first part we say there are many, but here we're talking about one, the biggest. Okay, so there's that contrast there, right? Then we come to incredibly vibrant. So just now we talked about however. So we come to incredibly vibrant. Here, this is the collocation. Incredibly is the adverb and vibrant is the adjective. Okay. These are collocations. And then you have vibrant or dynamic economy. Now, if you go to the OSDIC is a dictionary I've taught you guys in the writing class 2. This is a dictionary. Let's just go. So if you put the word economy, the noun, and collocation, which you will learn more in writing class 2, is about words that combine naturally, that go together naturally. So when you talk about when you're referring to a noun, when you have a noun, you want to think of an adjective that goes along with the noun, that combines naturally with the noun. And one of the adjectives, you look in this dictionary and you see that these are the adjectives. Okay, dynamic here. Do they have vibrant here? They don't have vibrant here, but that is a collocation. Okay, one thing you'll know is that not every collocation or word that goes together is in this dictionary. Okay, but these are the common ones. But vibrant is, you can use it. Okay, but the reason why I put vibrant / dynamics, because vibrant is a good collocation, but we use vibrant here already, so maybe you can just use dynamic. Okay, but anyway, these are the things you need to take note of. These are the collocations, and that is the analysis for question 4. And of course, this strategies for question 4 is this one. Same for question 5. Oops. Right, so are there any disadvantages of being famous? Well, there are a few drawbacks. In the first place, famous people are not able to live normally in the public. This is because everyone would walk up to them and try and get their autograph or picture with them. As a result, picture with the person. As a result, some famous people even resort to disguising themselves so as to avoid being recognized and to evade paparazzi. Okay. Another downside to being famous is the intense scrutiny that you would be subjected to. Every single mistake you make will be in the newspapers and tabloids, and your life would basically be an open book. Okay, there's a lot of good words here, so let's go through it. Firstly, you have the introduction sentence. Well, there are a few drawbacks. Drawbacks, again, as I mentioned just now, this is a very common synonym for disadvantage, but then another synonym here is downside. Okay. In the first place, I introduced it. In the first place, firstly, to begin with, okay, famous people are, so you have drawback, you have downside, yeah. Famous people are not able to live normally in the public. This is because everyone would walk up to them and try and get their autograph or a picture with the famous person, right? I think autograph is a good word that the examiner may take note of. As a result, some famous people even resort to, good vocabulary, disguising. Okay, as you can see, these are some slightly more uncommon words. Okay, evade is a good word. Paparazzi. Okay, all these are good words. Another downside is intense scrutiny. Okay, you have your good collocation, intense adjective, scrutiny. Okay, all these are, this is also a less common vocab. Subjected to. You be subjected to something. That this is a good collocation. You subject yourself to intense scrutiny. Every mistake you make will be in the newspapers and tabloids. Tabloids is another good word. Those it basically refers to those newspapers that love to print gossip and all that. Okay, not really serious. You have a lot of them in the UK especially, probably also in the US. Okay, and your life would basically be an open book. Now, an open book, this is an idiom. Okay, so what it means by your life being an open book is that everyone knows everything about your life. Okay, so a lot of good words here. Let's go to the next one. Problems. What problems does violence in the media cause? So again, this is something that you're asked also in writing task 2. So let's answer this. Several negative consequences could be pointed out. Firstly, the violence could have a negative impact on the behavior of people, especially children. For example, young people who watch violence on television may imitate such violence. This could result in criminal acts when the children grow up. Secondly, exposure to violence in the media could cause people to be desensitized. In other words, they become so used to violence that they accept it as part and parcel of life. The effect of this is that when they witness violence, they are not alarmed or they don't feel anything is wrong. Okay, so introduction. Several negative consequences could be pointed out. Negative consequences are another paraphrase or synonym for problems. All right, so you have your negative consequences. Violence could have a negative impact on the behavior of people. A negative impact. Good collocation. Maybe a bit common, but yeah, good. For example, young people who watch violence on television may imitate. A less common vocabulary. This could result in criminal acts when the children grow up. Secondly, exposure. Less common vocabulary to violence in the media could cause people to be desensitized. And again, less common vocabulary. Desensitized. In other words, okay, now you have your in other words. Okay, here you have your firstly and your secondly. That's fine as a cohesive device, a signaling word. In other words, also signals that I'm going to explain what I mean. Okay, in other words, so that's a good phrase. They become so used to violence that they accept it as part and parcel of life. Okay, so part and parcel of something means it's part of it. Okay, it's a inherent part of life. That means there's nothing abnormal about it. So this is a idiomatic word, phrase. The effect of this is when they witness violence, they are not alarmed or they don't feel anything is wrong. Okay, so some good vocabulary here. Let's continue with question 7, solutions. What steps can be taken to prevent racism in this globalized world? Many actions could be taken to combat racism. To begin with, we need to educate people about equality. The government could launch a campaign to raise awareness about the problem of racial discrimination and the effects of such prejudice against minority races. In addition, if we get to know people who are different from us, we'd be less likely to be intolerant of others, and we may even find out that we can get on well with people of different races. Therefore, the government ought to encourage different groups of people to spend more time with each other. Okay, let's analyze this. The introduction here. Okay, good collocation, combat racism. Okay, you combat racism. That's a good collocation. Now, for those of you who have not gone through the writing, again, you would not really know what a collocation is. So my advice to you is, after you've gone through the writing, go back to review these videos, and then you'll basically know what a collocation is. Okay, so just let me show you something very quickly about, when I say, oh, this is a good collocation. Of course, one of the dictionaries I use is Osdic, and I'm going to show you what I mean by combat racism as a good collocation. So if you go to Osdic, you can put racism there, and racism is a noun, a verb that you can use, that collocates, that goes together naturally with racism is combat. You can fight against, you can stamp out, okay? But so I use combat here, okay? It's a good collocation. To begin with, and in addition, these are your signaling words to point out your first and your second point. The government could launch a campaign to raise awareness about the... Okay, launch a campaign to raise awareness. I actually mentioned this phrase in your notes on causes and solutions, problems and solutions, the essay question. So it's actually written there. I encourage you to use this phrase, to use this, because these are good collocations. Launch, campaign, raise awareness. All right. So I've just used this here. Racial discrimination. This is a good phrase. Racism and racial discrimination means pretty much the same thing. Prejudice, good word. Prejudice against minority races. In addition, if we get to know people who are different from us, we'll be less likely to be intolerant. Another good word of others. And we may even find out that we can get on well. Did I use this before? Get along? Not sure if I used this before. Okay, maybe not. But I've used it somewhere in speaking part 1 or 2. All right, and it's an idiomatic phrase. Get on well, get along well means have a good relationship. Yeah, okay, so some nice words and phrases. And the last one, do you think young people spend too much time on the internet? So probably one question you face is one that relates to, asking for your opinion. So yes, no, yes, I do think so, no, okay. So you can start. If you ask me, I definitely think that people spend too much time online. Okay, so you could start if you ask me, or in my opinion, right? One reason for my view is that people nowadays probably spend more time surfing the internet and talking to other people online than speaking face to face with others. Surely This isn't healthy at all, as face-to-face communication is the best form of communication. Furthermore, even when people are out with their friends, they probably spend almost half the time on the phone checking their emails or replying their messages. All right. Okay, so you have your introduction here and you state your opinion. Okay. Remember to state your opinion. All right. So if they say, do you think? You say, yes, I do think. No, I don't. Okay. Then you have basically your one reason from my view. Furthermore, this is you signaling your first and second points. Basically, you're giving reasons for your viewpoint. Said people nowadays surfing the internet. Surf the internet. That's a idiomatic language. Okay, surf the internet. And talking face to face. It's a good phrase. Another thing is online. Okay, rather than saying on the internet, I just wrote online. Okay, so these are some good words. Just remember, the whole thing I've been trying to get at is, in this speaking part 3 is, okay, you have some kind of introduction, you have some signaling word for your first point and your second point, and you have supporting sentences, all right, supporting that first point. Here you don't really have a supporting sentence, okay, but that's fine. Okay, generally you want to have supporting sentences, but if one time you don't have, I think it's generally okay, all right, but you should have a supporting sentence. And then you may have some kind of like a rounding off sentence, a concluding sentence. Therefore, young people these days definitely use the internet too much, okay, or go online too often. Okay, it's just just kind of a rounding off to your whole point. Okay, so this pretty much concludes part 3. Remember, besides that structure that I've given you, this structure of course is using the divide into 2 or 3 parts. You can use other structures, and it's all in your notes. Other strategies, it's all in your notes, but the most common one would definitely be this. Okay, and introduction, first point, signaling for first point, main point, supporting sentence, signaling for second point, and supporting sentence. And then you also, of course, you want to get your grammar correct. Pretty much, I think almost everything here is correct in terms of the grammar. That's important too. But also for vocabulary, you will need to, pepper your sentences and your speech with idiomatic vocabulary. Which, by the way, when I just said pepper your speech, that's a idiomatic word there, because when it's not literally pepper. Okay, that's pretty much the definition of an idiom or idiomatic words or phrases, is that you're not using it in a literal sense. Okay, that's why it's difficult, and that's why for you to attain a good score in terms of vocabulary, you need to be familiar with various idiomatic language or idiomatic phrases and words. Okay, so if you don't know what kind of how to input your idiomatic phrases and words, go and do your research, as I've shown you before. That's the whole purpose of preparing all this. If you ask me most of these questions, just offhand straight away, probably I won't be able to come up with all of this. I did a bit of research just by going online, seeing, doing a bit of research for some of the questions here, and trying trying to think of some idioms, and these are this is the result of doing research. I mean, you do your research for your writing, you do your research for your speaking. That's part of learning. Okay, nobody can just straight away come out with all this, because actually a lot of this, for some answers, I put a lot of words and idioms and in there, which is probably not so natural, but you don't want to fit too many there. Okay, again, you just have to have a few here and there for the examiner to take note of. Okay, that's it.